beyond the clamor, breaking the world down to crystal clarity.
Wow.
Right. That's a powerful image to start a day with, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, it sounds almost like a line from a meditation guide. Or maybe, something you'd find in a manual on Zen archery or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But we aren't talking about meditation today. We are talking about a very specific, a very fascinating way of wiring the human brain.
A completely different kind of focus.
Right. So welcome back to the Deep Dives. Today we are digging into a massive stack of research centered on the max energy ME80 personality system. Specifically, we're looking at a profile that, well, I think a lot of you listening might recognize.
Oh, absolutely.
You might see this in a colleague, maybe a partner, or if you're being honest, maybe staring right back at you in the mirror. We are talking about the FFFU, which is also known as the quiet analyst.
This is a really special one to unpack. If I had to, summarize the mission of today's deep dive, it's to understand a type of person who operates with what the report calls high-density thinking within low visibility.
High density, low visibility. I really love that phrasing. It sounds like stealth technology. Like a submarine running deep underwater.
That's actually a perfect analogy. You don't see the submarine on the surface, but underneath the sonar is active, the engines are running, and the calculations are, well, they're incredibly precise.
They're doing a lot of work where nobody can see it.
Exactly. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of that, let's briefly orient ourselves. We are looking at the max energy ME80 system. Now, for the uninitiated, this isn't a horoscope.
Right, we aren't talking about star signs or magic crystals here.
No. The ME80 system uses an energy matrix to map human behavior. Think of it like a circuit board, or maybe an operating system for the mind. It looks at different layers of how we process information, how we handle emotion, and crucially, where we direct our energy.
And today, we are focusing squarely on the FFFU report, which implies a very specific configuration of that energy that leads to this quiet analyst persona. So let's unpack the core identity first. The report describes the FFFU as having a cool analytical style. Now, when I hear the word cool, I immediately think of, someone in a leather jacket leaning against a motorcycle.
Right, the classic movie rebel.
Yeah, but I have a feeling that is definitely not what the data means here.
Not quite. Think temperature, not fashion. Think about cooling down a highly heated situation. The defining characteristic here is that they do not rush to take positions. You know how in a meeting someone throws out a really provocative idea and half the room immediately jumps in?
Oh, the table pounders. I know them well.
Right. The action hero types. They shoot first and aim later.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the quiet analyst is the exact opposite of that. They aren't drawn in by that initial wave of emotion. Their core declaration is actually about distance. The report defines their control mechanism, which is essentially their default way of handling the world as perspective.
Perspective. So while everyone else is zoomed way in on the fire, they're backing up to look at the whole building.
Exactly. They habitually step back. They are gathering information, comparing logic, and looking at the structural relationships of what's happening. Their report says something really profound here. It says that for the analyst, judgment truly reliable must withstand time and scrutiny.
Judgment truly reliable must withstand time and scrutiny. That feels, I don't know, very heavy. It suggests they value being right way more than being fast.
Precisely. The source material puts it this way. They prefer slower over wrong, silence over rash conclusion. Their philosophy of control is that maintaining distance in chaos is the absolute only way to preserve clarity. If you get too close to the noise, you literally become part of the noise.
It's so interesting because in a world that constantly rewards hot takes and instant reactions, I mean, just look at social media.
Oh, it's everywhere.
This approach is almost countercultural today.
It really is, and that's exactly why it's so incredibly valuable. They act as the anchor for the rest of us.
Okay, so that's the identity and the control mechanism. Now, I want to get into the actual engine under the hood. The ME80 system talks about this energy matrix. For the FFFU, the overview describes their radar chart characteristics as low disturbance, high resolution.
Which perfectly matches that cool identity we just talked about. Low disturbance means they aren't generating noise, there's no unnecessary drama, no frantic energy bouncing around the room. But high resolution means they see the details clearly. Imagine everyone else is watching a movie on a really old, blurry TV.
And the FFFU is watching in Ultra 4K resolution.
Right. They see the tiny cracks in the CGI that nobody else even notices.
I want to walk through the 4 layers of this matrix because the report breaks this down really specifically. We have IP, IQ, EQ, and manifestation. This is the wiring diagram. Let's start with layer 1, the IP or inner value layer.
Right, the IP layer. This is where energy drives initiation. For the FFFU, this is the starting point. It's the spark. But here's the nuance we have to catch. For some people, initiation means, I have an idea, let me shout it out immediately. For the FFFU, the initiation kicks off an entirely internal process.
It's like turning the key in a silent electric car. The engine is on, you just don't hear a roar.
Exactly. It initiates a simulation. Which leads us directly to layer 2, the IQ layer, or emotional activation layer. The report defines this as intuition and speed judgment.
Wait, hold on. Speed judgment. I thought we just spent 5 minutes saying they were slow.
And this is the single biggest misconception about the quiet analyst. We see them as slow because they don't speak immediately, but internally. This layer is hyperactive. They have high-speed intuition. They are running scenarios, checking facts, and filtering data at lightning speed inside their heads.
Ah, I see. So the processor is incredibly fast, but the printer is slow.
That is a brilliant way to put it, because then we hit layer 3, which is the EQ layer, or decision calculation layer. This layer is all about emotional expression and release.
And for the FFFU, this acts as the gatekeeper, right?
It's the ultimate regulator. They are actively calculating the value of releasing that emotion versus holding on to it. They don't just blurt things out because they feel a sudden surge of excitement or anger. They ask themselves, does saying this actually add value to the analysis?
And if the answer is no,
They keep it inside. They use that internal emotion to fuel the analysis rather than burning it off as useless talk.
which brings us to layer 4, the manifestation layer. Reading through the report, it really seems to suggest this is the most critical part of understanding this specific profile.
It absolutely is. This is the big aha moment for understanding the FFFU. The report states very clearly that their energy operates inward. The key words to remember here are carrying, absorbing, and integrating.
Let's pause on that word for a second. Absorbing. It sounds a bit passive, doesn't it? Like a sponge just sitting there in a bucket of water.
It does sound passive, but it's actually an incredibly active, dynamic state. Think of a black hole. And I mean that in the literal scientific sense of immense gravity and density. A black hole violently pulls everything in. The FFFU absorbs the data, the emotions of the room, the hidden facts, the glaring contradictions.
And they just hold it all.
They hold it all. That is the carrying part. They're carrying the sheer weight of the information for the group. And then they integrate it. They are trying to fit all those disparate, messy pieces into a cohesive structure inside their minds.
So they aren't empty because they're quiet. They're actually full because they're quiet.
Beautifully put. They are often the fullest people in the room. If they opened their mouths before they were ready, the raw density of that information would just be overwhelming. They need to compress it first.
This leads us right into the deep analysis section of the report, specifically their inner traits. The core trait listed here is cool deconstruction analysis.
This is their absolute superpower. The report explains that quiet analysts habitually construct complete analytical frameworks in their minds. Imagine a master builder who absolutely refuses to just start stacking bricks on the ground. They need the full architectural blueprint first.
And as they get new information, what the report calls scattered information, they aren't just piling it up in a corner.
No, they are placing it one by one into this mental building. They are carefully fitting the pieces into the framework. They ask, does this brick fit here? No. Then where exactly does it go?
The source says they refuse to accept surface conclusions. This sounds exactly like the person who, when you tell them, hey, sales are down because of the bad weather, they just look at you with that highly skeptical face.
Exactly. They will immediately ask, is that really the only reason? What about the supply chain data from last month? What about that new competitor? They repeatedly confirm if the premises hold and if the logic fully closes. If the logic loop doesn't close, they physically cannot accept the conclusion. It's like a mental itch they can't scratch.
But what happens when things get really messy? Like when they face a truly complex, chaotic problem?
This is where their behavior becomes most distinct from everyone else. The report says when facing complex problems, they automatically slow down. They need to maintain a stable thinking rhythm to allow for deep computation undisturbed.
Deep computation. It really does sound like a supercomputer.
It is, but imagine you have a supercomputer running a massive critical simulation of the universe. If you keep banging on the keyboard or opening new browser windows, you're going to crash the system. They need that undisturbed state to finish the calculation.
However, we don't live in a world that really likes to wait for the simulation to finish, do we?
And this brings us to the shadow blind spots. Because every superhero has a weakness. What is the kryptonite for the FFFU?
The report identifies their major trap as delayed action.
Delayed action.
It's the dark side of that cool deconstruction. It's the excessive pursuit of a completely perfect understanding. They want the mental framework to be flawless before they take a single step. I can totally see that. If you are building a perfect mental map, you never want to issue a verdict until every single piece of data is locked in place.
Right. They constantly worry that their judgment hasn't matured yet. So they keep adding information, they keep researching. But here is the fatal trap. The environment doesn't wait for them.
The market changes, the client leaves, the critical opportunity just expires.
Exactly. The report notes that because they keep adding information while the environment is rapidly changing, they can entirely miss opportunities. They fall into severe analysis paralysis.
And how does this look to other people? To the boss who is tapping their watch and waiting.
That's the really painful part. The source says others often misread this extreme caution as coldness, apathy, or a total lack of engagement. Imagine you're in a crisis, everyone is running around frantically trying to put out the fire, and the FFFU is just sitting there silently thinking. You might want to scream at them, don't you care?
But they do care.
They care deeply. They are agonizing over finding the actual correct solution. But that extended silence creates a massive emotional gap between them and the rest of the team.
And I have to imagine that leads to some intense internal struggle for the analyst, too.
It absolutely does. The report mentions it can lead to heavy internal self-doubt. They see the world moving so much faster than their internal process, and they might wonder, why can't I just decide like everyone else? Why is everyone else so confident when they clearly don't have all the facts? It can be a really lonely place to be.
So if you are working with an FFFU, or if you happen to be one yourself, you really have to navigate that tightrope between the need for perfect accuracy and the demand for speed.
Yes. But let's look at the flip side of their interactions. Let's talk about their social relations. Because despite that potential for being misunderstood, the report calls their interaction style low-key reliability.
Low-key reliability,
Yeah.
I like that. It implies that they definitely aren't the ones standing on the table singing karaoke at the office party.
No, they don't claim attention. They don't try to actively lead the social dynamic or dominate the conversation. The report affectionately calls them observers and record keepers.
That sounds incredibly useful, honestly.
It is invaluable. Think about a chaotic family dinner or a really messy team meeting. Everyone is talking over each other, rewriting history to suit their current argument. The FFFU is the one who quietly remembers every single detail. They organize the scattered threads of conversation in their head while everyone else is just shouting.
And when they finally do speak.
The report says they offer precise opinions at critical moments. They simply do not waste words. It's the sniper approach to conversation. One shot, one hit.
I love that. And the report mentions that people who truly take the time to know them discover something else hidden in there.
Yes, a high-confidence judgment hidden beneath that quiet exterior. They aren't quiet because they are unsure or timid. They are quiet because they are verifying once they verify. Their confidence is absolute. You literally cannot shake them from their conclusion.
So knowing all of this, the high-density thinking, the inward-pulling energy, the relentless need for accuracy, where do they actually fit best in the professional world? The report lists some business values and recommended career fields.
Well, their primary business value is definitely not speed. If you need someone to slap a good enough solution together in 5 minutes, do not ask an FFFU. Their supreme value is accuracy.
Ensuring every step lands on reality. That is such a great phrase from the report. It's fundamentally about risk mitigation.
It is. So looking at the recommended professional fields, number 1 on the list is data and research analysis, obviously.
I mean, it's literally in the name, quiet analyst.
Exactly. But looking a bit deeper, the second recommendation is strategy planning and assessment.
Strategy. That makes perfect sense.
Right.
Because strategy is all about the long-term, big picture.
Right. Strategy requires looking at deep structural shifts, not just reacting to today's breaking news or a single bad quarter. The FFFU is naturally doing that anyway. They are always looking at the foundation.
The list also includes system and process review.
This fits perfectly because they are natural deconstructors. They can look at a broken workflow, whether it's a physical factory line or a million lines of software code, and see exactly where the logic fails. They see the tiny cracks in the foundation that everyone else is just stepping over to get the job done.
And the final one listed is high complexity problem analysis.
The harder the problem, the more their deep computation truly shines. If it's a simple issue, that is a brilliant distinction. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Think about how much massive waste is created in business and honestly in life by decisions that were just made too fast. Decisions based on bad data or just pure temporary emotion.
The rash conclusions that the report specifically warned about.
Exactly. The FFFU protects the entire group from that disaster. They are the brakes on a runaway train.
So let's bring this home for you, the listener. If you are an FFFU listening to this deep dive, I think this report acts as a massive validation.
I really hope so. It's essentially telling you that your need to slow down isn't a flaw in your character. It is a highly tuned quality control mechanism. You should embrace the cool deconstruction. Don't let the world pressure you into being hot-headed or hasty just to fit in with the louder voices. Your true value is in your clarity.
And if you happen to work with an FFFU,
Stop interrupting them. Give them the data, give them the time, and learn to trust their silence. If they aren't speaking yet, it doesn't mean they aren't working. It means the process isn't finished. Wait for the result. I promise you, it will be worth it.
I want to wrap up with the conclusion straight from the source material because it really sums up the dignity of this personality type. It says, as the world rushes forward, this type chooses to see direction first.
And the gold sentence the report leaves us with is this: truly solid decisions are often born from this kind of quiet.
Decisions born from quiet.
Hmm.
That is definitely something we could all use a little more of in our lives, I think.
Absolutely, no question.
This has been a really fantastic exploration of the FFFU Quiet Analyst. Just a reminder to all of you listening, this deep dive was based entirely on the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. It is a pretty incredible system for deeply understanding why we do what we do.
It really is. The level of detail in these layers, the IP, the IQ, the EQ, it finally gives you a working vocabulary for things you've probably felt your whole life but just couldn't quite explain.
If you want to dig deeper into this yourself, or maybe find out where you personally fit on the energy matrix, you can check out their official website. It's at www.maxenergylife.com.
Or if you're more of a social media person, you can search for them on Facebook. Just search for Max Energy or Med Energy, specifically looking for their pages on energy personality psychology. There is a lot of really great community discussion happening over there as well.
Definitely worth a look. So to all the quiet analysts out there, and to the people who rely on them every day, embrace the silence, trust the internal process, and keep deconstructing the world until it finally makes sense. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought. What if the most impactful, powerful thing you could do tomorrow when a crisis hits is simply to wait? Think about that. Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Until next time.
See you then.